Stephanie, thank you for being with us today. What are some of the efforts that FEMA has engaged in to encourage or mitigate the cost of natural disasters across the country?
Thank you, Doug. So one effort that recently FEMA has undertaken was to look at the concept of a public assistance disaster deductible. So looking at how we as a federal agency reimburse states for costs that have been incurred to rebuild public infrastructure. We've been under a lot of pressure, and there's been a lot of focus recently on how much the federal government is spending on disasters and the cost to taxpayers of that from various entities, including Congress, the Office of Management and Budget, Inspector General, the Congressional Research Service, and specifically looking at how there is a per capita threshold for states when they come to FEMA and to the President to ask for a presidentially declared disaster. To that end, there was a period of time where the per capita threshold was not increased for inflation. So some believe that it's artificially too low, and so that therefore we've actually have a higher number of presidentially declared disasters than we normally would. So looking at the pressures, looking at the federal budget writ large, we realized that something needed to be done, or something needs to be done rather, to reduce the cost of disasters, and wanted to look at it not just from a fiscal standpoint, but really look at how as a nation we've increased capability, and something that's probably not as readily evident in that per capita threshold, but also steps that states with federal funding, but also on their own funding, have taken to reduce the risks nationally, to reduce the risks locally, whether it be from flooding, from fire, from earthquakes. There's been a lot of great work across the country to buy down those risks. So the thought was behind the public assistance deductible is to look at the risks to states, come up with a deductible, kind of like an insurance deductible that they would have to meet before receiving their initial federal funding for a disaster. But to that deductible, states would actually be able to apply credits for things that they have done to take efforts to mitigate against floods. Again, looking at building codes, do they have a rainy day fund, things along those lines. Again, really giving states and locals and tribes the credit for the work that they've been doing year after year.
So there are many things that states themselves can do to mitigate and lessen the cost of a natural disaster, and it seems like FEMA has an opportunity with the disaster deductible to give them some credit, give them some ability to receive their funds, and give them some recognition for meeting these efforts.
Absolutely, and that is something I think that we have not necessarily captured all that well. We obviously understand and know the dollars that the federal government has put into mitigation, pre-mitigation, so before a disaster, as well as the funds that go to states after a disaster as part of those costs. But really working with our state partners and with the associations that represent them to better understand what they have been doing over the past many years to make their communities safer, make them more resilient, and to give them credit for doing that.
What should state legislators understand about the disaster deductible?
Thank you for that. So as we move forward for the next step for this proposal, we do believe that this is an important conversation that we're having, and an important dialogue that needs to take place within the country. So as a state legislator, I would ask that they have those conversations with their body, with other state legislators, and importantly, more importantly rather, to have the conversation with their state emergency management directors, with their governors, and with their communities about what they want to do to build more resilient communities, to build smarter, to really help reduce the risk, and what they're currently doing are their best practices out there from other states that they could adopt as well.
And a final question is, what is the next steps regarding the disaster deductible? When will this regulation be finalized?
So we finished up in March. We received the initial comments from our advance notice of proposed rulemaking, and we went through about 150 comments overall, received from a variety of institutions, states, individuals, and have moved forward with a draft concept that we're currently socializing within the Department of Homeland Security and with the Office of Management and Budget, and we'll be moving that forward based on other priorities within the administration, and hope to have something out for additional comment here in the near future, but certainly we would like to see before the end of the year, and to continue that conversation. We're doing this in a very transparent and deliberative manner, and we do not want individuals or states to feel that we're not being inclusive. So we're trying to have that conversation to get the feedback, to get the comments, and to address those.
That's great. Well, thank you. We have been talking with Stephanie Tennyson with FEMA, and on behalf of the National Conference of State Legislatures, I want to say thanks.
Thank you, Doug.